Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to join us this afternoon for our slow looking event in line with our exhibition Holbein at the Tudor Court, which is currently on display at the Queen's Gallery, Buckingham Palace. My name is Amy, and I'm so pleased that you've all committed to taking some of your time, some time out from your day today to join us, to pause with us in the appreciation of art, and hopefully feel the benefits of taking just a moment to slow down and reflect. Now, before you really relax into this event this afternoon, just a little bit of housekeeping for you. We are coming to you live stream through YouTube this afternoon. So if you wish to, and you can make use of the captions, please do enable those with the CC option on YouTube. You can also use the chat function. We'll be keeping an eye on that, but we do ask if you've got any reflections or questions, please don't put them in during the slow looking and the meditation sections. There will be time at the end to ask questions of our wonderful speakers who have just appeared there on our screens. So let me introduce you to them. We have joining us this afternoon, Kate Hurd. Kate has curated the Holbein at the Tudor Court exhibition, and with this display in the Queen's Gallery, she has presented us with an array of characters from the Tudor Court. And if you have the chance to go and see it, then you can really stand face to face with these people, and you really get the viewpoint of the artist Hans Holbein as we examine his incredible drawings. And Lucia is also joining us from the Limina Collective. Lucia is a mindfulness and meditation art expert, and she is giving us new ways to pause and appreciate art in a mindful way. And that's exactly what we're going to do this afternoon. We're going to focus on one particular work from the Holbein exhibition, and we're really going to take the time to study his portrait and be present with him. So Lucia, tell us, why the painting of Derek Bourne?
Okay. Oh, hello. Really good to be here. Yes, well, there's so many amazing paintings and drawings in that exhibition, so it was quite difficult actually to make a choice. But I think we agreed we wanted to look at a painting, and just from all the paintings, I just love this one. I mean, what can I say? I really love it, and I just think it's quite masterful. But like all of his paintings are, of course, like that. But anyway, so that's what I can give you. I just loved it, and I hope you do love it too. And you, Kate?
I was so glad that this is the painting we settled on. Like you, I absolutely love it. As you know, we chose to close the exhibition with it. It's a really rich painting. There's so much to think about and so much to say about it. So yeah, I'm really pleased we're talking about Derek Bourne.
Good. Thank you so much. So I think, Amy, shall I just continue from here?
Yeah? Yes, let's take a dive in, Lucia.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. So yes, welcome to this session, the slow looking part of it, at least. Before we start the slow looking, I just want to take us back again to that painting that you may have seen when we were when at the very beginning of the session. And then, of course, you can't see anything, but now you'll see it. And I just thought, let's just spend a bit of time just looking at this image on the screen, this painting. And the other day in the gallery, we actually asked people to just spend a few minutes just looking at the painting. And apparently, on average, it's only it's not a lot of time at all, like 25 seconds or so, the average of that people spending with a painting. So I think we're quite lucky today to have so much time spending with one particular painting. And just when we're looking, anything that strikes you immediately, we could just ask ourselves that question. Anything that strikes us immediately, where does the eye go immediately? I was just noticing how the eye roams over this painting. And perhaps also, are there any strong questions coming up in relation to this painting? Any strong questions that come up? Or not so strong questions, any questions at all? If you do have any questions that are coming up for you, I just invite you to maybe just write them down on a piece of paper or a notebook, whatever you might have at hand. We could just write down those questions. We use them at the end if we want to. We've got Kate talking about the painting at the end of this, well, the last 15 or 20 minutes of the session. So any questions, you might just want to write them down. So let's just say goodbye for the moment. We'll return, of course, to our sitter shortly. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen for a moment. And yeah, I just had a few things I wanted to say before we dive even deeper into this particular painting. I just want to say I'm a member of Limina Collective, which is presently Carly Allen and myself, and we were working about 6 years or so in the museums, particularly with workshops, doing slow looking and mindful looking sessions with people. And also we've been doing some recordings, and we're so delighted that 2 of our recordings are actually on the audio guide to the exhibition, and you can also find 2 on the website. But that's the kind of thing that we're doing, combining mindfulness with looking at art and sharing those methods with others. And before, we often start our workshops with a short guided meditation. So that's what we're also offering to you today. So I'm just inviting you for 3 minutes to join in with this short practice. And yeah, we don't have to close our eyes if we don't want to, but we could. If you feel comfortable, I'm kind of moving my shoulders a bit, just to know I'm sitting here, just feeling the seat underneath. You might want to wriggle around in your chair a bit. And then also feeling the feet on the ground. So the feet hip width apart on the ground. And maybe if you don't really feel the ground at the moment, you might just want to press the soles of your feet into the ground a bit, so you can feel that hardness of that floor underneath, and you feel the muscles of your legs. I've got my hands on my legs, but you could just have them in the lap. Just getting a sense of the weight of the body on the chair. And then perhaps also listening to any sounds that might reach your ears. Sound from traffic or people. And then perhaps also noticing any air on the skin, the touch of the air on your face or on your hands. And then feeling into the body, just noticing any tightness there or tension. Maybe it feels completely open and relaxed, but you might feel a bit of tightness there somewhere. And just inviting you to notice that. Doesn't have to change. And also inviting you to feel the breath in the body. So you might feel the rib cage going up and down, expanding, contracting. So feeling the breath in the body. You might feel it at the chest or at the belly, wherever you're feeling it right now. And as we're still connecting with the breath, listening to sounds again. And feeling the weight of the body on the chair. And then opening the eyes if you had them closed. And just allowing the light to fall into the eye. Any colors. And any shapes. And then perhaps directing your attention again to the screen. And welcome you back in this next part of the session. I'll just say a few words about mindfulness and presence and being in the present moment. Or you could say that mindfulness as a way, you could define it as a way to engage with the present moment. So that's a way that you could describe it. Or you could also say it's a state of being open and present. So there is that word presence there, and being present in the moment, which is quite a thing with mindfulness. And it's just really a faculty of the mind that everybody has and uses, but it can be trained to become stronger. And we often find ourselves, I think, lost in thought, and which is a lovely thing often. So mindfulness can help us guiding ourselves back to the present moment, and a lot of the thoughts we might be involved in are quite creative and interesting and wonderful, which is lovely. But at the same time, quite often our thoughts could be of a different kind of nature. They could be ruminating, cyclical, and they're just often repetitive and automatic. And it's the automatic, repetitive, ruminating thoughts that often lead to intensifying difficult emotions, and it sort of leads us into a stronger sense of worry or stress or anxiety even. So mindfulness can sort of give us a way to come out of that rumination and come back into the present moment. So it is really about being present with our thoughts and being aware of them, and rather than the thoughts running the show, as it were, and us not really having a lot to say about everything. So being present with the thoughts also create these moments of conscious choice, which is also amazing, that you actually consciously can make a choice to put your attention somewhere. And also it allows us to act rather than react. So that's another way that can help us. And we usually in mindfulness use an object to come back to. So what we just done in a short practice was we focused a bit on the breath and on the sound and on the body and maybe on temperature, so the sensations of the body. And those kind of objects can just get us back into the senses, out of that thought, as it were. And that helps us calming the mind and maybe steadying the mind as well. And then if we practice mindfulness with artworks, we use external objects. So we use light, we're using colors and shapes, lines. And artworks also evoke our interest and also delight, which really helps us concentrating and focusing. And if we look at artworks with mindfulness, we're also training that focus and the agility of the mind, which is amazing, that we could just decide, okay, we're not going to look at this thing, we're going to look at the other thing. We're kind of training ourselves to do that much more clearly and finely, as it were. A bit like how Holbein would, use his sort of his pencil or his chalk. Yeah. So It's about looking intentionally, so really looking, noticing where we're looking, but also how we're looking, the quality that we're bringing to our looking. So we're also training the mind to look non-judgmentally. It's a difficult one, that. Looking with curiosity and openness, and if we're looking with consciously with curiosity and consciously looking with openness, we can also go beyond self-critical thoughts. And self-critical thoughts often arise, I think, in relation to what you might be looking at when you enter a museum. So you get this sense of, oh, I don't know this, I don't know that, and you might feel a bit bad about yourself because of that. And also, oh, I don't like this one, I do like that one. So we're going beyond all of that and just look more closely and longer, and then establishing more of a connection, maybe even to the artwork. Well, having said all of that, I'd now like to invite you to join in this slow looking part of the session. I'm sharing my screen. Here we are. And just wanted to show you that this is the red room in the exhibition, and this is actually, I think Kate also still mentioned it, it's like the last work, you could say, in the exhibition. So we got the blue arrow there, and that's where we find Derek Bourne. And you can also see him in his frame. Derek Bourne, we're going to look at it more closely, but first just wanted to run this by you, that of course we know it's painted by Hans Holbein the Younger, and it's the name of the sitter was called he was Derek Bourne, and you can see the dates of his when he lived, and also that the painting the portrait was painted in 1533. And then we also had a bit of a sense of the proportions, but just on the right hand side you see that it's 60.3 centimeters by 44.9, and then it's oil on panel. So that's a few specifics about this painting. Just get a sense of proportion and a tiny bit of information here. So I'm going to start going into the painting more now. And so this is the slow looking part. I invite you to rest the gaze on this image. And just letting the eyes go wherever they want to go for a moment. And then inviting you to explore the edges of this painting. We could just start at the top left corner, and then just following that edge along the top to the right. We can do this slowly or quickly. You just take your time. And then from that corner, we just go down, straight down, till we meet the right corner at the bottom, and then across again to the left, meeting that left hand bottom corner, and then going up again, exploring that edge with your eyes, and then arriving where we started. So now let's spend some time noticing the colors in this painting, finding any blues, any blacks, quite a lot of black here, any whites, bigger patches of white, smaller patches perhaps, And then also greens, any greens you could find. Different tones of green. Browns. And then we got some sort of cream color here, skin color. Pinkish. And then we got some orange tones. Hints. And now let's just start at the bottom of this painting. Finding a horizontal ledge here. And you might see that under this ledge there's some script, which is Latin. But perhaps for the moment we could just look at it as shapes and lines and colors, rather than finding meaning in the text for now. So maybe also noticing the mind wanting to make sense of these words, but we could for now just steering it back into actual looking. Then also spending some time with this parapet, its edge or edges, and the colors of the stone. And then there is this sort of line or crack, you could say, separating these two stone slabs. You can see that on the left of this elbow of our sitter. Now also noticing clearly that arm that's resting on the ledge. The contours of the sleeve where it's in contact with the stone. It's exploring that. And then also finding the hands there at the end of that elbow. I'm going to go closer to the hands now. A bit fast, perhaps. Well, here we go. A close-up of the hands. So let's just spend a bit of time looking at these hands and maybe also comparing the two hands. Maybe the colors of one hand are slightly different distribution. And one hand might be more detailed than the other hand. And then looking at the hand on the left, you can see the ring around his index finger. I was noticing that shape and the colors there. The other colors of this hand, the shading, indicating knuckles, the parts of the fingers in the shade. The knuckles, the different knuckles here. And then perhaps also noticing those nails. We can see quite a few here. Also noticing that nail on the thumb. And then coming back again to that hand on the right side. Noticing those knuckles actually seemingly touching the edge of the painting here. And also the hollow of that hand disappearing somehow at the edge of this ledge parapet. Now just inviting you just for a moment to look away from the painting and just look at your own hands for a moment. You might even want to imitate the position of the hands of the sitter if you want to. So spending a bit of time with your own hands, just looking at the colors, the lines, the play of the shadow and the light on your own hands. And the texture of the skin. And then let's go back to the painting again and looking at those hands for a moment longer. And then we're going to zoom out again. So here we got the whole of our sitar. So let's have a look at the background here. Noticing leaves and stalks of these plants, that vegetation behind the sitar. Perhaps also the light reflected on the leaves. And also noticing the black cloth of his garment here. Noticing the drapes and the crinkles, the rising and the falling of that fabric and the fur. Maybe even noticing that difference there between fabric, cloth and fur. Perhaps also noticing some seams and the light reflected on that cloth and the fur. And then noticing his shirt, the white cloth, and the details, some sort of embroidery there on that collar of that shirt. And then the hat, the shadows there. And I'm going to take you more close up to the face now. Noticing that color of that hair, that sort of chestnut color of that hair. And then the contours of the face. You might want to join in with me as I'm following the line of his cheek on the right-hand side, and just following that line from the chin up. Just noticing that rising and falling of that curved line, getting thicker and thinner at places, more defined, more vague in other places. And noticing the fringe, the short fringe here. And then looking at his eyebrows, just noticing these different hairs in each of these eyebrows. The eyes. The one on the left and the one on the right. And then the nose. Noticing the details here. Nostrils. The bridge of the nose. And then to the mouth. the lips and the chin. And then taking in that whole face and perhaps sensing an expression on the face here. And perhaps even briefly feeling into your own face and just feeling how that is. How does that feel? I'm going to zoom out now. So let's look at that whole painting again and noticing the elements we looked at, like the background and the parapet with the inscription, the arm and the hands, the black garment, the shirt, the hat and the face. So looking at somebody who lived 500 years ago and who's looking back at us right now, right here, still alive in his way. So just let's spend a few more moments looking at each other. And then feeling your weight on the chair. Listening to any sounds you might hear. And then I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment. Always a bit of a strange moment when you've looked and now we're all of a sudden seeing very different kind of view here. So I had in mind just to do a bit of reflective writing with this painting, and this is an unplanned kind of writing. If you want to join in with that, it's just for us to reflect a bit in writing, and just to say that we could write anything we want, and whatever you write will be right. There's no kind of inner critic, there's no sort of red pen, and whatever. We're just going to see whatever comes out. And if you need to adjust spelling or grammar, we could always do that later. And yeah, and by all means, don't listen to any inner voices saying you can't write, because you can, everybody can. So let's just do a few moments, a few minutes of writing. And my first prompt, if you have something at hand that you could use for writing, my first prompt is, I'm going to show you the painting as well as we're doing this, to just write your response to this painting and the person depicted. So I'll just show the screen again. So a few minutes just to write about our own response to this painting and the person depicted. And then also briefly, perhaps, write about what you think Derek Bourne at this moment of he's been captured, what may he have seen, what may he have smelled or heard or touched from sitting there. So that's one for the imagination. What might he have seen or smelled or heard or touched from where he's sitting? And you may also just want to now take a moment to read what you've written so far. And then if you want to post anything in the chat, some thoughts or comments or observations or discoveries. Yeah. And now I'll stop sharing my screen here. And we're back to Amy and Kate. Really curious if you had any thoughts, Kate or Amy.
I loved thinking about Derek Bourne's experience sitting in front of me. I'd never thought about that before when I was looking at the painting, and I started to get a really strong sense of sort of what smells might have been and how that plinth might have felt under his hand. It was a really productive way of thinking about the painting.
Oh, lovely. And you can imagine sort of Holbein being in front of him, yeah, this is as close as we can get, looking at the painting to how it must have been to be in Holbein's shoes. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Amy, any thoughts?
Yes, I mean, I'm just always suddenly taken aback every time I look at the painting of Derek Bourne, and we've had some comments in the chat about just how compelling he looks and how his eyes really draw you in. And I had a little chuckle to myself, Lucia, when you said, what do you think that Derek Bourne may have seen as he sits there? And I thought, I think he sees everything from that look on his face.
Oh, that's lovely. Well, thanks so much for joining this bit. I think we're moving to the next bit, aren't we? Yeah, see you later.
Thank you, Lucia.
So I think I'm going to tell you a little bit about the painting itself. We have a PowerPoint. This is a familiar painting now, but I'd like to start not with Derek Bourne, but with the man who painted it. So the man on the other side of the picture, as it were, and that's Hans Holbein. We haven't heard so much about him yet today. So I thought I'd tell you a little bit about him before telling you who Derek Bourne was and why he might have wanted a painting by Holbein. Holbein is a German artist. He was born in Augsburg. He was the son of an artist. He was from a family of artists, and he trained, we think, in his father's studio. But at a relatively young age, he moved to Basel in Switzerland and set up on his own and became enormously successful. And he gained commissions from the Basel elite. He was commissioned to paint portraits. He was commissioned to create altarpieces, stained glass designs. He designed books. He was really set up as an artist in Basel. He joined the Painters Guild in 1519. He married, he started a family. And that could have been the end of the story, but Holbein was ambitious. And we think he was looking to go even further and was looking for a court position as a court artist. We know that he tried his hand in France in 1524, we think looking for work at the French court, and he didn't succeed. He's back in Basel pretty soon afterwards. But in 1526, he tries again, and he travels to England. And he travels to England with a sort of introduction to the great courtier and writer Sir Thomas More, who writes to a man called Erasmus in Basel, a great thinker and writer who'd given Holbein this introduction, that Holbein is a great artist and he's going to try and help him gain his career in England. And Holbein's career in England really took off from the start. He did brilliantly. He painted a couple of projects for More, a portrait of More that's now in New York, but also a family portrait that's now lost. He painted the Archbishop of Canterbury, and he went briefly back to Basel, then came back in 1532 to the Tudor court and spent the rest of his life until 1543 working at the Tudor court, painting courtiers, writers, thinkers, churchmen, ladies in waiting. Everybody who could afford one wanted a Holbein portrait. And that, I think, is where Derek Bourne comes in. Derek Bourne is one of those people who commissioned a portrait from Holbein, and we know quite a bit about this portrait from the portrait itself, and the next slide will show you how we do. Oh, sorry. The next slide we're going to see shows you how we date the painting. The painting dates from 1533, and there's an inscription.
Sorry, Kate, about
that's
technical difficulties with the
no, don't worry.
In the background.
I'll let you pop it up again. So in 1533, Holbein had just come back from Switzerland. He'd re-arrived in London, and he paints a number of portraits of German merchants in London. There we go. There's the date 1533. You can see that at the bottom right there. It says Anno 1533. And that's at the bottom right of the painting on the plinth. And I'll show you the whole plinth later on and tell you more about that inscription. So Holbein comes back to London in 1532, and he gets at least 7 commissions from German merchants working in London, all of whom were based in what was known as the Steelyard, which is an enclosed community from where these traders who were not London Bay, or were not native English traders, they'd come from abroad, they were allowed to trade under special privileges from that enclosed compound. So we have 2 of the Steelyard portraits, as they're known, in the Royal Collection. Here's another of them on the next slide. This is an unknown merchant, but we know that he was painted in 1532 because of the date on the piece of paper lying on the table in front of him. So this was painted shortly before Derek Bourne, but is another member of the Steelyard. We know that because the letter he's holding is addressed to a merchant of the Steelyard. We just don't have his name. Now, if we put the two side by side, which the next slide will do, there we go, you can see how these Steelyard portraits are not uniform in any way. There's no sense that they were a set. They're all individual commissions. So both the unknown gentleman on the left and Derek Bourne on the right are German merchants based in the Steelyard, and they have slightly similar poses, but that is where the similarities end. You can see the man on the left is telling us he's a merchant through his merchant seal, through the letters in front of him, the coins that suggest he's interested in trade. You can see the key at the bottom right on the green tablecloth, and that suggests, to me at least, that he trades in valuable goods. He needs a cupboard to lock things in. Not everybody in Tudor England had a lockable cupboard. So if you've got one, it suggests you've got something valuable you want to keep safe. But the backgrounds are different. The gentleman on the left is clearly on an interior. But Derek Bourne, he's very different. He's got that vine behind him. If we move on to the next slide and concentrate on Derek Bourne, who was he? I've said he was a German merchant. He was 23 years old when he was painted by Holbein, quite young. He'd come from Cologne. We know that in 1536, he supplied military equipment to Erasmus Kirchner, who was the king's armourer. So he's supplying military equipment to the Tudor army. In 1541, just shy of 10 years after this portrait was painted, he was expelled from the Steelyard. He and his older brother were both based in the Steelyard. They were expelled because they had fallen out with the Duke of Suffolk, one of the most important men in the country. You didn't want to fall out with the Duke of Suffolk. And he was back in Antwerp. He's recorded then in Antwerp in 1542, 1543, trading goods like towels. He seems to have traded in a number of different goods. And the final time we find Derek Bourne in the records is in 1549, when he's back in his native Cologne, making a formal complaint about his expulsion from the Steelyard. He's still complaining about the fact he'd been thrown out of London. Now, that's not to say he died in 1549. That's simply the last time he encounters the record. He may have gone on for some years after that. But what we see in front of us is the young man right at the start of his career and advertising his confidence as a young man who's going places. You really get a sense of someone who's on the up, who's really making it and has that sense that he's going to succeed. Here's where we go to the plinth, which is the next slide. This, you see, shows that the portrait doesn't just advertise Derek Bourne's achievements, it also advertises Holbein's skill, Holbein's confidence as an artist. And this is where we get to the inscription. In English translation, it says, if you added a voice, this would be Derek, his very self. You would be in doubt whether the painter or his father made him Dare or Derek Bourne, age 23, the year 1533. Now, this is a piece of praise that was originally applied to Albrecht Dürer, the great German artist. That was published in a book which had been illustrated by Holbein, so Holbein knew it, and Holbein has taken that praise and applied it to himself here. Holbein is saying, I am so good, so brilliant, that you couldn't, all you need is a voice, and it would appear as if Derek Bourne would step out of the frame. And I think we touched on that earlier, that sense that he's right there in front of us, he's right alive. So that plinth, that inscription on the plinth advertises Holbein's confidence and skill. But if we go back to the painting, if we look again at wonderful Derek Bourne, there are many other ways that Holbein advertises his skill here. And if we look at the vine, this occurs in a number of Holbein's paintings, behind sitters, in portraits mainly, appearing behind the sitter. It is the subject of a lot of debate. What does the vine mean? Does it have a symbolic meaning? We can't even work out what the plants are. We call it a vine. But I think it does a number of things. First, it creates that sense of three-dimensionality. Derek Bourne we see sitting in a space, in the same way that the unknown merchant had a shadow on the wall behind him. Here we've got Derek with something behind him. So he's in a three-dimensional space. But they're absolutely brilliant pieces of painting. Holbein has used a technique called wet on wet, where he's taken different colours of green in wet paint and he's mixed them on the panel as he paints, so the paints all slide together and the colours merge. And the vines seem, if you look at them, to grow before your eyes, to keep growing, and the leaves seem to unfurl. And this is Holbein the illusionist, showing you how brilliant he is at painting. And finally, back to those blacks that Lucia mentioned, those different black fabrics that he wears. Holbein is brilliant at fabrics and at the textures of fabric. And here he's almost advertising his absolute ability to show with just one colour the different textures of fur, of satin, of velvet. You can almost reach out and touch them. They really are quite incredible. So this is a painting which is a young man saying, look at me, I'm here and you've got to take notice of me. But it's also the artist saying, look at me, I'm here and you can't not take notice of me either. That's really why we used it to close the exhibition. It is a wonderful advertisement of Holbein's skill and one of his most attractive paintings. That's my presentation.
Thank you, Kate, and thank you, Lucia, for the slow looking and guiding us through it. And I think we've got time for just a couple of questions, and I think let's leave Derek with us, presiding over us while we chat a bit further and ask the questions. Kate, one for you to start, if I may. It strikes me that Derek was, what was he, early 20s when this painting was commissioned?
Yes.
He seems to be presenting himself in quite a way, in quite a dominant, powerful way at such a young age. Is that common for the merchant classes of the time?
It's a really interesting question. The merchant classes have a lot of money, and if they're successful, and they want to advertise their status. So the portrait is an advertisement. But if you look around the exhibition, you can see that often it's Holbein who's posed his sitters. There's one instance we have where Holbein starts drawing the Earl of Surrey and clearly thinks this isn't working and starts again. So what we don't have is the dialogue between sitter and artist. We don't know how that discussion went, but Holbein, I think, probably said, sit like this. I want to show you, sitting like this, with your arm leaning. There probably wasn't actually a plinth in front of him, but that sense of him facing forward, facing us really confidently, but also slight relaxed pose, it's slightly nonchalant, isn't it? I'm here, I'm in charge. So this confidence is what the portrait is intended to portray, and that isn't unusual, particularly for merchants who want to show that they've got that prosperity. But I think Holbein played a part in it.
Thank you. And Lucia, for you, it feels, my take on this is that this portrait for something like slow looking, particularly for somebody who might not have tried slow looking before, this painting feels like a dream, because you're drawn in immediately with his eyes, with the pale colour of his skin. But have you got some tips for people of how, if they find themselves in a gallery or an exhibition and they don't know where to start with a painting that perhaps isn't as bold as Derek, how would you start off?
Well, that's interesting. Thank you so much, Amy. I'm thinking of we have made a recording of also Thomas Howard, and who was not a very nice person, and that was a bit of a, if you know, sometimes the knowing a lot about these people is a bit of a hindrance. But so I think I recommend just for this, you just don't really, I think, want to get in touch with really violent emotions in yourself whilst you're doing it, because you're doing it to calm down. And so I just really recommend finding something that you feel like a pleasant attraction to, or like some joy maybe, and then using that in an exhibition. So of course, you could look at whatever you like, but in terms of the slow looking, that's something we certainly recommend. So getting having your eyes resting on something that is fairly calm and pleasing, that might work best. Is that what you were asking? I hope so.
Yes, definitely. And do you think that sometimes is it does it help if you pick perhaps a painting that's got some bold colours in it, or just thinking it's quite easy. I find it quite easy with this one. Once you've got past Derek and his stare, you can almost get lost in the vine as well in the background.
Yeah, that was in terms of the description or the script for the slow looking, the big sort of black kind of area. It was a bit of a challenge, but then it's also, yeah, you could just really get interested in all these different colors. I think it's a lovely challenge to really observe how he's done it, and I think he must have known that as well. It's so difficult, isn't it, to paint black and then show all these different nuances. Yes, but on yes, regards to your question, yes, I think so. I think if you have a work with bold colors, that might also be quite joyful. And sometimes, yeah, I notice myself, like I have particular colors that I really sort of that really brighten up my day and make me happy. Like there's a particular kind of yellow. If I see that, my heart just goes like, "Way, what a beautiful color!" So yes, if you have any of those responses with the paintings that you pick, that would be wonderful, wouldn't it? Because kind of reinforces that feeling of joy if you dwell on it. Yeah.
Thank you. And Kate, just to end, can you tell us a little bit more about some of the other characters that we might meet in the Holbein exhibition? Because we've talked about Derek being a merchant, and I think there is a very strong association, of course, when you say Hans Holbein with Henry VIII and his court. Are there a range of figures that we meet in the exhibition?
There are a fascinating range of figures. Among the figures are Thomas Wyatt, who was the poet and ambassador, and there are a number of writers who commissioned Holbein. Obviously, Henry VIII, he became king's painter, so he made that iconic image of Henry VIII, but also portraits of Henry's wives, one which is believed to be Anne Boleyn, Jane Seymour, perhaps even Catherine Howard. Politicians like Thomas More, soldiers, ladies in waiting, landowners, churchmen. You get the full range of the Tudor court. It is the elite because you've got to be rich enough to be able to afford a Holbein portrait. They wouldn't have been cheap, but you do get a sense of, there's one gallery you can stand in the middle of it and you are surrounded by the Tudor court. It's quite an experience.
Thank you, Kate, and thank you both for giving us this opportunity this afternoon. Lucia, particularly to you for giving us this opportunity to pause, to look and reflect, which I think is so valuable in busy lives. If you haven't, yes.
Can I just say that, just quickly add, if you are in a position to go and see this exhibition, I 100% absolutely recommend it, because I was bowled over. I think you've done such a fantastic job, and it is just such an experience to visit the exhibition. So I really recommend it. So please.
Yes, and if you would like to, you have until the 14th of April to see the exhibition at the Queen's Gallery at Buckingham Palace, and you can immerse yourself in the Tudor court. You can spend a little bit more time with Derek Vaughan if you would like to. If you can't make it to the Queen's Gallery, let me just share with you some future exhibitions, some future digital events that we have coming up over the next few months. Hopefully you can see the QR code there, so you can scan that to find out a little bit more about these events. Of course, the Holbein drawings and the portrait of Derek Vaughan are part of the Royal Collection, so you can explore more of the treasures in our collection at rct.uk. If you want to take even more of a dive into the Holbein exhibition, listen to another slow-looking piece that Lucia and her colleagues have put together. You can find that on our website as well. If you go to the What's On and you filter by exhibitions, you'll find all of the content for the Holbein exhibition there. There's a virtual tour that you can enjoy as well. The catalogue is available. Should I give a quick plug to Kate's wonderful book to accompany the exhibition, either from our 2 London shops next to Buckingham Palace or online there as well. And whilst you're busy looking online, do check out the Limina Collective website to hear more wonderful recorded pieces of So Looking, and also to see what events they do. But thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. It's been a real pleasure. Our next Slow Looking event, if that's particularly what you're interested in, is on the 14th of May. So do come back and join us then. But otherwise, I wish you all a very relaxing and peaceful afternoon. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks everyone. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.